All right, and we are live. So thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Brandon Aldis. I'm the coordinator of career readiness at Business Central, and we're going to talk today about interviewing tips.
Okay, introductions. You're going to go first, Brandon?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is still Brandon, and I'm still the coordinator of career readiness here at SUNY Adirondack. I have my undergraduate degrees in agricultural business management from SUNY Cobleskill. I've worked in res life, I've worked in student affairs, I've worked in judicial affairs, I've worked in alumni and advancement. I've worked kind of all over the place, admissions a little bit, in higher ed. And then I also worked for a year for a private company here in Glens Falls as their customer service and sales team lead. So I have a diversified background. I'm really excited to be able to bring that to the role here at SUNY Adirondack. I also have 4 kids, a dog. I really enjoy hot air balloons. And during my free time, you can find me, I don't know, doing what? I actually just wrapped up grad school, so I don't know what I'm going to do with my free time. So we'll see. I'm not sure. Vacations are off now, so I've got to find something. Maybe I'll read or take a nap. I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot to be discovered, but that's me.
All right. I'm Bonnie Stouffer. I'm the director of Business Central, and I have a variety of career paths that I've actually embarked on throughout my overall career journey. Started my career actually at a community college where I got my associates, then learned that I really wanted my bachelor's and master's, went on for those eventually, did it while working and raising a family. So my background is in marketing. I had a 20+ year career in marketing in various roles, working with startup marketing agencies, as well as larger agencies. And then I moved into executive recruiting and executive coaching. So when we talk about interviewing, I have a lot of knowledge on that from having coached a lot of people through their interviews. And then I found this job and really feel like this is a great way for me to bring all of my skill sets to the table to help students as well as the entrepreneurs and businesses in our community. And Brandon and I are a pretty good team together. So hopefully you'll take advantage of our one-on-one services.
And as a side note, because I think that everyone should know everything that is stuck in my brain, I was yesterday number of days old when I found out that if you have an iPhone and you text someone else who has an iPhone, the words pew pew, it does a super cool laser show. So if that's relevant to any of you, I highly suggest trying it. Pew pew.
Oh my gosh.
So what does today look like as we walk through interviewing? We're going to try to go over what this looks like and what Bonnie and I's experience was prior to COVID-19. And then we have a few updates and real tips for you guys for what this could look like moving forward. So whether those interviews be over the phone, in person, or online, we have a few tips of common practices that we've learned, as well as what this could look like once the world gets to its new normal. So we're going to try to hit the gamut today. We're going to try to keep it to a half an hour and have you guys out of here at 1:30. But essentially, here's what we're going to go over. So we're going to define an interview and what that looks like. We're going to go over how to prepare and how to practice. Those two things are different. We want to make sure you're doing them to the best of your abilities. How to dress and what dressing for an interview looks like, regardless of the situation. Tips for phone, online, and in-person interviews. How to wrap it up, and then what to do after.
So what's an interview? Really, you could think about an interview as a way for you to get the job, but really ultimately in that, in the process of an interview, it's a two-way dialogue. And hopefully you're getting a good idea of if this is a good fit for you, and they're getting a good idea if you are the right fit for the role. So this is an opportunity for you to really demonstrate your resume, help bring those skills and those accomplishments to life. But also, there's a lot of energy that goes into an interview, and the best interviews are ones when you really can bring your full self to the interview and have a good back and forth dialogue and feel like when you walked away from it, you either know, yes, I really want to work there, or geez, no, that's maybe not the best place for me, but you learn from it and both parties will learn from it. So that's the objective in taking you through this. So the key to success really is preparation. And there are a few areas that we really encourage you to be prepared. And having been an executive recruiter, I will tell you that I've seen people go into interviews and think they can wing it. And it's just, you know, the role may have been perfect for them, but because they weren't prepared, they don't get further in the process. So really the key is preparation. So how do you do that? The first big building block is for you to do your research and really dig into building your knowledge base on the company, what they're all about, really look at their website, link out to any of the links that they may have to their products. Sometimes they'll have product pages for their the products that they sell or services. Really look at the roles in the company, research their competition, and use LinkedIn also as a research tool, because the key thing is when you're interviewing, you're talking to somebody. And those people are probably out on LinkedIn somewhere, and you can get some good insight into what their backgrounds are. And maybe you know somebody that knows one of your interviewers. That's another way to get good insight. But really take the time to build out that knowledge base so that you can be prepared for that good two-way dialogue, and you'll be able to ask better questions and be able to reframe your skill sets in light of what you know the company does and how they do it. The next area is really to know your resume. And that may seem common sense, but I will tell you, you get into an interview and somebody asks you a question about a bullet point that may be something that you did 7, 8 years ago, and they ask you a very focused question, and all of a sudden you don't remember the details because you're nervous. So this is where really preparing yourself to really demonstrate your resume. So one of the things I always encourage people to do is spend some time and just take open up a Word doc and just do a core dump of the things that you know you've done that you're really proud of, and know how those relate to the bullet points on your resume, and think of them in a mini case study format. So what was the situation? What did you do? What were the results? And then think about what would be important about that little mini story to the person who's interviewing you. And in that way, your resume really will come to life and you'll be better prepared. And if you spend this time up front, then if somebody asks you a very focused question in the interview, you won't get as nervous. And I've seen people really, even interviewing with me as a recruiter, I've seen people kind of fall off the rails on this point. So it's really important for you to know your resume. If you said that you increased sales by 30%, you better be able to demonstrate how.
Another question I always really like too that usually speaks to the resume is when an employer asks, tell me about a difficult project you worked on and what made it difficult. And when you can relate back to your resume, because your resume should theoretically show your job responsibilities as well as a summation of your accomplishments and achievements. So when you got past that hurdle and got to that accomplishment or achievement, be able to speak to some of the struggles that happened along the way that got you there. Whenever an employer asks you one of those pointed questions, especially to your resume, use that resume as a tool to get there. But when you know those bullet points well enough to do that, you look that much better. Would you agree, Bonnie?
Great.
Okay.
You have the next one.
All right. So practice makes permanent. A lot of times people say practice makes perfect, but it only makes it perfect if you're practicing the right way. So think about it. If you were to practice shooting a soccer ball into a basketball hoop, will you ever be good at soccer? No. So you want to make sure that you're practicing in a way that's going to be most beneficial to get you to where you need to be. Schedule a mock interview with us so that we can do something similar to this. We can stay here on Zoom. We can ask you questions. You can practice some of those on-the-fly responses and be better prepped for them. Work out your nerves ahead of time and test your technology so that you know there are no glitches. We can help you with that too. So if you find out that you're going to be doing a presentation similar to this, but in an interview style, test it out with us. Practice pulling off your presentation, practice activating the Q&A feature, practice your click-through rates, and just make sure that everything is timed and working the way you want it to. Bonnie and I actually do that every morning before one of these. Bonnie and I get together usually around 9 a.m. in the morning. We're going to do a presentation, and we do a walkthrough of it together to make sure that our slides are presenting the way that we want them to make sure that our Zoom links are working, to make sure that if there's a password, we're providing it to people ahead of time. So Bonnie and I do that every morning before we do one of these presentations, and we've already got the job. So if you guys are in a place where you're doing something like that, reach out to us so that we can help you get there before a job is on the line. Plus, we're both pretty fun. I mean, we'll just tell you how it is. So you want to make sure that you dress the part. So whether you're doing a phone interview or a Skype interview, dress in a way that makes you feel comfortable and confident in the type of interview that you're in. It'll allow your brain to shift from into a professional or work mode instead of an at-home or in the car mode. Make sure that it's neat, clean, nothing flashy. So for any of you, I see your hand, Eric, 1 second. So for any of you who have seen Tiger King, don't dress in fun patterns like Carol Baskin, who totally killed her husband. But don't dress in those types of patterns. Make sure that you're keeping it low key, that you're dressing for the job in the right industry. So down here I have farmhand versus sous chef versus office manager. So each of those industries is very, very different, and we would expect you to dress a little bit differently depending on the industry you're in. If you're interviewing to be a farmhand, you probably don't want to wear a three-piece suit to the interview. Eric, you had a question?
Oh, yes, I was actually just about to ask the same thing. So let's say I'm interviewing for a job at Walmart or Stewart's or something. That's when I want to like dress casually. And let's say I'm working for this big corporation that's huge. Would that require me to wear a suit?
Yeah, it would definitely, in my opinion, and Bonnie, either back me up or totally contradict me, whatever sounds right. In my opinion, it would be sort of relying on the job that you're applying for and who you're interviewing with. If you're applying for a management level position, then yeah, you're probably going to want to make sure that you're dressed really, really well. If you're applying for a cashier position at Stewart's or something like that, well, then maybe business casual is a little bit more appropriate for that role. Bonnie?
Yeah, absolutely. So say you were going to interview at a device manufacturer, but the role would be working on the manufacturing floor. You're still going to want to wear, business casual, even though the role might be on the manufacturing floor, because you'll likely be meeting with people who are in corporate roles like HR. You might be meeting with someone in training or from the, in management level. And so you want them to see that you want the job. Really important for you to just be, neat and clean and, just be really cognizant of it. And, if you get called for an interview, it's also okay to say to the recruiter as you're on the phone with them, can you tell me a little bit about your dress code? Because sometimes they'll say, even if it's a management role, we're business casual, so please just wear what makes you comfortable in a business way, but it's okay to ask as you're scheduling the interview as well.
Okay, so that kind of goes along with like being prepared at the beginning of the, yeah. Okay, so yeah, be prepared when you had to ask for like a dress code or anything else for that matter. Okay.
Yep.
And later on in the presentation, we're going to get into some of those questions you should be asking along the way as well. But asking the employer some of those questions is totally okay. Once you're offered that interview, it's okay to ask HR, hey, who am I going to be interviewing with? Or, hey, what is the dress code? Where should I be going? Where should I park my car? Do I need a parking pass? Like, there are some things that are okay. If they're on your mind and it's going to keep you calmer just asking the question, then ask the question. But we'll get into that too.
All right.
Okay, so tips for the phone interview, especially now in the world that we're in, you're going to find most companies are doing phone interviews versus just pulling you in for in person. So some of the tips, and I believe in these. I've done these being a candidate as well as really recruiting. I've encouraged people to do this. So really be ready ahead of time and confirm the contact information, who is calling whom. Know that you know, if you're supposed to be calling them at a certain time. And that's, sometimes in an interview situation, you will be asked to call the HR lead and at 10 o'clock in the morning. So be sure that you're ready and prompt and you call exactly at 10 a.m., not 10:05, not 5 of 10. Call right on time. When you do that, that's very impressive to people. Then they know you're absolutely spot on time. If possible, when you're doing a phone interview, I really encourage people to stand up, to have a headset. When you stand up, you project your voice differently. Imagine that you're actually saying hello and shaking their hand. So you're gonna put a smile on your face. You're gonna bring that energy to the conversation. They will hear it, I promise you. They will hear it. And as you're preparing, make sure that you are in a place where there's quiet, where there is no background noise. I know the cycle of our, garbage pickup on Thursday mornings. I would never do an interview in my upstairs, my main floor on Thursday mornings, because I know the noise outside of my house. I would do it in my basement in the back of the house so that no one would ever hear that. So just really be thoughtful as you prepare, be ready for it, and bring your best energy because it comes through on the phone. I promise you it comes through. Another few tips, on the phone, it's really easy to talk over someone. I'm sure you've all had that experience where you go to talk and they go to talk and it's like, all right, who started first and who really should be talking right now? Really be conscious of listening to what they're asking and allow a bit of a pause in case they haven't finished what they were going to ask. Make sure that you really are very thoughtful in listening so you're not talking over someone. And I know sometimes we get excited and we want to tell the thing that's in our mind, but allowing that pause gives you just that hair bit of time to be thoughtful and come across as you're listening, because what you don't want to do is come across that you're not listening. If it's a panel interview and you're on the phone and there are several other people on the phone, be sure to ask who is speaking. It's fine to, generally, if you're doing that, they'll introduce themselves around the room, but it's hard then to know what the difference between Jane's voice is and Sue's voice. It's hard to keep all that straight. So if somebody goes and asks you a question, it's perfectly okay to say, may I ask who's speaking? And that way you can refer back to them. If you've written down their names, that's fine. And it's fine for you to have notes and, write a few things, have your resume and your notes in front of you. For me, when I interviewed for this job, I had my resume, my research notes, I had other items in front of me that gave me confidence that I knew my stuff. I had it visually in front of me. I was able to bring that energy into the conversation. So it's perfectly fine for you to do that. You're on the phone. And take the notes as you need to so that you can keep the conversation going in a way that is productive.
Awesome. So another opportunity you may have to interview will be via video interview. And we're starting to kind of see a different level of where these video interviews are falling into place. So before, a lot of times it would be a phone interview and then a video interview and then an in-person interview. There was kind of these 3 stages to interviewing. Now, or a phone interview and then ending with an in-person interview. Now we're actually starting to see a process that actually ends with the video interview. I can actually tell you that the college has made several offers to people in the last month and a half by only video interview, because with COVID-19 and the different regulations and everything around that, we aren't bringing people to campus to interview the way we traditionally would. So if we're doing that, imagine what other employers are doing. So definitely be ready for that video interview to happen, most definitely, but be ready for it to happen in a different stage in the interview process than it maybe would have in the past. So here's some tips for that video interview. So test your tech and lighting. Make sure that you have a modest background. So wherever you're going to be interviewing, wherever you're going to do this video interview, make sure that the background behind you is not distracting, that you're not sitting in front of a bookshelf, for example, where someone's going to want to read every book title, or you're not sitting in front of an inappropriate poster or something like that. Make sure whatever is behind you is modest and appropriate for doing that interview. Make sure that if you're presenting, there are no tabs open or bookmarks that you might be embarrassed about. So for any of you who are on Facebook, there was the meme going around about the professor who had a bookmark that probably shouldn't be shared with everyone. So just when you look at even the screen that I'm sharing with you today, you can see that I'm logged in through my SUNY Adirondack account. So the bookmarks that I have are appropriate. I'm not embarrassed by any of you seeing those. But if I had been shopping on Amazon just before this, well, Bonnie might start to question what I'm doing with my work from home time. So make sure that whatever tabs you have open up here and whatever your bookmarks are along here, if you're screen sharing to present, the people on the other end are going to be able to see those. So just being cognizant of what you have open on your computer. Be ready at least 5 minutes before jumping online. Look directly into the camera. So you don't need to lean in like this when you're talking, but you definitely want to make sure that you're looking at the camera and making that eye contact with people. They can feel that. There's no reason to lean into the camera, but just making sure that you're looking at the camera and not another screen or at your phone or at your papers. When you look at the camera, it's as real as you can possibly do given the technology in between you. So make sure that that's what you're doing. Sit up straight and smile. Feel free to take notes. Again, maybe use one of those lines like, "That's such great insight. Give me just a second to jot that down." And cell phone app versus computer. So in this world, we're definitely all trying to figure out what this looks like. And sometimes we just have to do what's right. Some of us may not have the internet at home that makes it so that we could do this type of stuff on a laptop. So a cell phone is what's going to be more feasible. Still follow the same instructions and give yourself as much stability as possible. So if you're going to do it on your phone, make sure that you're still finding a quiet place somewhere. Make sure that you still have that modest background. Don't be doing the interview like a selfie and walking around your house the whole time or snapping at your kids or anything like that. If you're going to be interviewing from your phone, just make sure that you're giving yourself as much of that stable environment as possible. Act as if it were a desktop computer, even not something that you're going to move around. If you have a place that you can set your phone so that your phone is just sitting during the interview so that you're not fidgeting with it or anything like that, go for that too. So just being kind of cognizant of what those expectations will be. Obviously, if you're going to share a presentation, your cell phone may not work. And if anyone were ever in that predicament, I would be happy to talk about some other opportunities, especially right now, for you to make sure that you have updates to be able to do that. But just being cognizant of what those expectations are, what's going to be realistic for you to do that interview, and then setting yourself up for the most success as possible. Any questions about all that? All right.
All right, in-person interviews. So, you know, this is a new world. So a lot of this is changing. This is a topic that Brandon and I are staying up on. You know, what are some of those social etiquette type things in the post-COVID world as we head into interviewing, right? Some of this is never going to change. You always want to be early. So make sure that you've mapped out how to get there. You know where to park. If you need a parking pass, you know who you're going to ask for, and make sure that you're walking in and giving yourself enough of a cushion that you're comfortable, you're not nervous. There's nothing like, you know, being nervous walking in the door because you're feeling like you're late and frazzled. So give yourself that buffer. Bring some extra copies of your resume. If you know you're going to be meeting with 3 people, bring 5. And I would suggest you have them in a manila folder or Padfolio, not loose sheets. It's too easy to lose them. It doesn't look as professional. So, you know, be prepared to look professional. Make sure you have a pen with you so that you can fill out any. You may be asked to fill out an application in the lobby. Make sure that you're ready for that. And just really take those deep breaths as you're getting into it. When you meet the person, respect the social distancing, and this is where the world, is changing. People may not be shaking hands. They may just say, "Hi, nice to meet you." Just recognize that, this is the world we're in. I would recommend having hand sanitizer with you just in case you need it. Again, I always over prepare on these kinds of things. I wouldn't suggest that, you shake someone's hand and immediately put hand sanitizer on, because then maybe you're saying to them, "Ooh, I'm scared of shaking your hand." But, just be cognizant of sort of that social etiquette. But, so you shake somebody's hand, they sit down at their desk, they reach for their hand sanitizer, they're using it. Okay, that just gave you license to use it as well. So just be conscious of sort of those social cues. And then if you are in a panel interview where you're in a conference room and there's a whole bunch of people around the table, when I interviewed at SUNY Adirondack, that's the way it was. And ahead of time, I had asked for the names, but they were not allowed to give them to me as part of the process. So I walked into a room with 7 people that I did not know. So as they introduced themselves, I did the best I could to at least write down their name as to where they sat around the table, so I could remember and refer to their name. It's fine to do that. And also what that's going to enable you to do, hopefully, is to then say, "Erin, thank you so much for that question. Here's how I would answer it." And you're using their name back. And again, it becomes more of a natural dialogue. So it's really important, if somebody asks you a question, to address your answer to them, but then also read the room. Anything else to add, Brandon?
So there was one thing that I meant to put on here, but I totally forgot. If you end up in a waiting room waiting for an interview, make sure to chat up the secretary or whoever's in that room. Just a conversation with them. One, it shows them that you're personable, but 2, secretaries sometimes aren't on the search committees or whatever, but the hiring manager always goes back and asks the secretary what they thought of the candidate and asks for their feedback. I've been on search committees where the final decision more or less was made by the perception the secretary had of the candidate. So make sure that you're talking with them too, that you're being respectful, and that you're having a genuine human conversation with whomever you come into contact with and have an opportunity to do so, because it might be the secretary, it may be the CEO, you never know who's sitting there in the room. So chat them up too.
So if you're uncomfortable with that and you wonder, geez, what could I ask the receptionist or the secretary or admin, whatever, one great question to ask is, "So how long have you been here?" You ask that, that's a wide open field then. "Oh, I've been here 3 months. What do you like about it?" You could go on and on from there, right? So just, that's a real simple way to get into a good conversation. So as you're wrapping up the interview, you'll be asked, "So do you have any questions for us?" This is one area that I will tell you as a recruiter, I was always amazed at how many people would get through the interview, and even though I had coached them to ask a question, that they would not ask a question. They would be uncomfortable doing it. But you can knock yourself out of the running really fast with this. So really ask a question. Ask about the interviewer. So how does your role interact with the role that I'm interviewing for? Why do you like working here? How long have you been here? Anything like that. Ask about what qualities are important in the ideal candidate, or why is this role open? Really important to be able to confidently ask a question and get into, that shows your interest. You can ask a question that shows that you did your homework. And if you have any questions on doing this, we can walk you through exactly how to do it for any of the roles you might be interviewing for. So definitely encourage you to take us up on the mock interview piece. Another area that you really want to ask about is, tell me about the next steps in this process. And then reinforcing your interest by giving them a nice closing statement that says something to the effect of, "Is there anything else I can share with you that would help move me forward in this process?" And that shows that you're interested. that gives them an opportunity to circle back. When I asked that question at the college, they asked me back a question that was completely off of their script, and it enabled me to showcase some of my other strengths. So I really encourage you to have the confidence to ask that question.
And then after the interview, so you want to make sure you follow up with a thank you note emailed within 24 hours of any type of interview. So whether it be a phone interview, video interview, or in-person interview, make sure you follow up with that "thank you for your time" type email. Reference your conversation with them, reinforce a key skill or experience, and demonstrate your interest in the role and company. All of those are very important, especially reinforce your conversation. I've gotten thank you emails that were sent more or less as soon as we hung up the Skype call, and it was obvious that that person had pre-typed them before the conversation and sent them as soon as we clicked end so that it was done. Make sure you reference the conversation so that it's much more personable and shows your interest and intent. Update your job search tracker with any notes, insights, dates, etc. Again, if you've watched any of our other presentations, we always encourage everyone to keep track of the applications they're sending out, where they are in the process, and notes about the company. So if you're doing that along with the process, make sure that you update it after each interview you have. Some of the notes to include in there are the names and titles of the people that you've met with, anything that you learned. So any of those questions that you asked them that they actually answered, make sure that you're taking those notes down as well. And then the date that you interviewed, what type of interview, that sort of stuff. And then follow if you don't hear back. We typically say within 2 weeks, some sort of feedback, whether it be you moved on, or thank you so much, we're going a different direction, or hey, this is taking longer than we expected. If you haven't heard a communication from that HR office or whomever, it's okay to reach out and just do a quick check-in. Hey, I had the opportunity to interview 2 weeks ago. I really enjoyed that opportunity. I just wanted to check in and see where you are all at in your process. All right.
One thing I would add about the thank you notes, personalizing them, if you've just interviewed with 7 different people and they had different functional roles, but they were part of a panel, likely they will compare their thank you notes. So if you write the same exact thing to 7 people and you don't take the time to personalize it, they will be likely sharing them. Everyone shares it with HR. HR will look at all of them and say, okay, that person didn't show as much initiative as this other person who customized each email. So there are reasons, there's a method to our madness here. There's a reason why we tell you to do that. It really demonstrates your interest and your interest in being professional and continuing the dialogue.
I would also say too, this is a time when you're going to really want to make sure that you're doing what you can to make yourself stand out compared to others. As the bans and the rules on COVID-19 begin to lift and businesses become open again, that unemployment rate is already shot through the roof, and all of those individuals are going to hit the job market all at once. There's going to be a lot of applications for the same job. So those little things that you can do to make yourself stand out compared to the rest are literally the smallest thing that it'll come down to between you getting the job or someone else getting it over you. So with all of that, let's open it up. What questions do you have for us? Feel free to unmute yourselves or click the link here at the top and type in your question. If anyone has any questions, now's the time for it.
I pretty much asked my question earlier about the dress code situation. Other than that, I have nothing else to say.
Awesome. Amy, Faith, Lori, you guys good? All right.
Wait, there's a question in chat.
Oh, do you see it? I don't.
Amy, in terms of good fit, was there a particular question you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Do you want to try to connect on a personal or professional level when you're engaging with your interviewer?
That's a really great question. So In some ways, it could be either. So if you're in their office and you notice that there is a picture of them skiing at Killington and you're a skier and you say, oh my gosh, I love skiing at Killington, then it shows some personality, some interest. Then you can get into, you know, a very brief dialogue on something personal where you connect. Or it could be something professional. I noticed on LinkedIn that you're a member of, you know, XYZ professional group. I used to be a member of that, but I'm wondering, you know, what is it like now? Are the meetings still good? I'm thinking of rejoining, you know, so you can, depending on what it is, and that's why you do your homework too, right? If you see something on somebody's LinkedIn background and you think, geez, I want to know more about that. Oh, they're a member of Seroptimists. I want to know more about that organization. You know, it could be either, but you know, if it's personal, you want to not go too far down the personal route.
Right.
You know, you see a picture of them with 5 kids. How many kids do you have? You don't want to do that.
Although that happens to me a lot. Good question, Amy. Anybody else?
Bonnie, I know you mentioned preparation is key, and you had talked about, you know, take a look at the company and their competition. How do you best suggest we research the company's competition? Where do we go?
That's a great question. It's going to depend on the type of company. So say you are, say you're going to interview at AngioDynamics. So you know that AngioDynamics is in medical device and they have certain types of devices that they manufacture. So then I would go out and start Googling their devices. You can find great industry reports. If the company is publicly traded, you can go out to their website and you can see the reports that they have to file with the SEC. Their annual reports will state how they're doing in their competitive industry. There's a ton of information if they're publicly traded that you can dig up. If they're privately held or a small startup, they're still going to have competition likely. So then you might look at, you know, where are they competing? So one company I know of, it does domain names. They secure domain names for other companies. And so I would start by Googling the name of their company, and then I would start Googling domain name companies and see who's coming up, because maybe it's not a local company they compete with, maybe it's a global company they compete with. But if you have any particular places you're going to be interviewing and want to go through that, that's an area that I personally just get so jazzed about. So just let me know. We could get on the phone and I could start pulling stuff up and sending you links, because it's just, I love doing that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Amy, too, I would say if you are applying for a job because it's a special area of interest for you, so let's say you were really very interested in medical devices, by doing that research, you may even find another professional opportunity for yourself with one of their competitors. So once you start doing that deep dive, if it's a special area of interest or specialty for you, you may open yourself up to a whole nother level of opportunities. And by doing that research, you actually find out that Company B is rated much more highly by their employees than Company A. And so now, boom, you have a whole nother opportunity for yourself.
I totally agree. I did discover that as I began researching, and yeah, my horizons were certainly broadened, and just kind of critiquing some of the websites for one company, I noticed a lot of like issues or discrepancies, and I had a conversation with one of my professors, and she had mentioned, well, if you do go for the interview and they ask, you know, why are you applying? Because you don't meet our standards and qualifications. You could probably bring, you know, the issues that you noticed up in that point and explain that, you know, well, I wasn't sure if there was a typo in the posting, and that it was suggested to me that this would demonstrate my research ability, and, you know, I'm not going to just just feel limited. You know, I'm going to go out there and try for it anyways.
Yep.
Yeah. And I heard you say, if you go for the interview, one thing I would always recommend is always go for the interview unless you've gotten another job offer somewhere else that you've already accepted. So if you're offered an interview, even, I just think it's good practice. It's a good way for you to show engagement. And it's a good way to keep your opportunities open. Bonnie?
As soon as you know that you're interested in, say, 5 different companies, and just throwing out that number, I would start following them on social media. So start following them on LinkedIn, start following them on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever they are. And you're going to do that for a number of reasons. You're going to get content and business insights into what they're doing, but you'll also get insights into their culture. And if you see on Facebook that, you know, somebody had a complaint about their service and post something about it, this is notorious, the airline industry, right? So people will post a complaint about Delta Airlines, and then you see everyone going down the complaint route. Well, this happened to me and that happened to me. And then the company doesn't reply back, or the company replies back in a way that's really heavy-handed. You can get an insight into the company and how they think about things by how they manage their social media dialogue. And that's really important in today's world.
It certainly is. It can help you narrow down, you know, what you're looking for.
Yeah, and it could take a company right off your list or put them squarely in the center of your bullseye of, I absolutely want to work there.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Would it be appropriate before you do an in-person interview, say for example you're doing over the phone, would it be appropriate to ask, you know, what type of interviews they prefer to conduct, whether it's structured, situational, or behavioral, just so you're a little more prepared?
You know, I would say, and having done recruiting for a long time, I would say to really prepare for all of them. If you ask the question and they say structured, and you walk in the door and it's a panel of people and you get someone who's throwing behavioral questions at you, and then you're not prepared because you only prepared in one way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to think through the types of questions you could get asked and be ready to answer them in whatever format you're asked. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
And that's where going through mock interviews can help, because you can look at a particular topic, and in a mock interview, we could role play different angles of that question from a structured, unstructured, or behavioral standpoint. And I've had interview panels where, 9 people will be interviewing someone, but not all at once. So the person's going from one interview to the next. And I've had interviewers who, generally are doing behavioral questions, and then they get in front of a candidate. They absolutely have already determined that candidate is going to be the one, and they don't even ask any real interview questions. So the candidate goes in, is absolutely ready for all the behavioral questions from the head of regulatory, and then head of regulatory is just like, oh my gosh, I want this person. Let me just sell them on how awesome we are. And, it can throw you off your game, but you have to be ready for anything.
Certainly do. Because you go in there with one mindset and they kind of change gears on you. You don't want to be in panic mode.
Exactly. That's why preparation is key. I mean, spending the time to really think through it, you'll go in with a lot more confidence, and you'll be able to ask better questions and do a better assessment.
When I was interviewing for my last job at the last college I was at, their interview was very situational. And so they kept throwing me a lot of these, hey, if this happened, how would you handle it? And the last question they asked was, you're planning a large conference for students and your keynote speaker backs out a couple of days before, what do you do? And I handled the question really, really well. And then once I was hired, I went to host that conference, and not only did the keynote speaker canceled a little before the hotel canceled. So
Oh,
yeah, so it was way fun. And they were like, oh, we totally jinxed you. So sometimes those questions end up coming full circle. So have good answers ready. Any other questions anybody has? Awesome. All right. Well, obviously, if you
oh,
someone chatted,
Faith has one.
do you see a chat, Bonnie?
Oh, yes, I do. So the question is, how would you recommend preparing for an interview different from what you've done in the past, retail versus office? Fantastic question. And that speaks to a career transition. And we're actually going to be doing a workshop on transitions down the road. I think it's in 2 weeks.
The 28th.
And so we'll be talking more in depth on that. But what I would recommend doing is looking at your strengths and your skill sets and what is applicable. So retail versus office. So I'm going to assume that you've got retail experience and you want to get into an office. If you've got retail experience, you are used to dealing with the general public, and the general public can run the gamut as far as communication skills and expectations and service and promptness. And so translate the types of problems you solved in a retail environment, or where your strengths really were at play in a retail environment, and flip that into the office. So in retail, you have to listen to your customer and understand what the problem is, and then seek to solve it. So then how do you take that and translate it into an office? Office environments have problems too. So all of a sudden you're working on, getting some materials out the door for your boss and the copier breaks. So how do you do that? So your collaboration skills, your communication skills, your ability to think about the details, all of that is important. And so translate an example from being in retail into the office environment by speaking about those specific skill sets that you bring to the table and your ability to handle collaboration or customer service in the moment, how to handle technology in the moment, and then demonstrate your desire to be in the office setting where you can be part of problem solving for the office and helping them to achieve their goals. Did that answer the question? Great, thank you. Yeah, so we are definitely going to be talking about that, because if you are going to be transitioning from one type of career or role or industry into another, there are ways that you're going to want to look at the job postings, look at your resume to tailor it so that you can get into the interview process, and ways to flip your experiences, like I just talked about, having those good examples that are translatable into another world and thinking them through. And you can do that based on the job posting. And I actually am really good at looking at resumes and job postings and helping to see where those things translate so that I can prepare people for interviews. That's basically what I did as a recruiter. All right, anything else?
All right. So our next presentation will be a week from today on the 21st. That one, we're going to go over LinkedIn profiles and building up your LinkedIn. So making sure that you have a really great online presence, that you're representing yourself well, that you're searchable, and that you're using that tool to its most opportunity. So it's a really great way to get yourself noticed online. So we're going to do a session totally just dedicated to LinkedIn and what a good profile looks like. Bonnie has an exemplary LinkedIn profile. So she's going to kind of walk us through how she's built hers, how she's built her connection, and how she utilizes it almost all day, every day. So we're going to walk through that next week. So make sure to sign up. Some of you probably noticed that whether you sign up for a specific session or not, I give you all of the invitations and you get to pick what you come to. So just because you signed up for today, I'll be sure to include the following links when I send them to you guys anyway. It's always the same meeting room. So if you use the same link you got today, it'll be the same link again next week. But we'll send out the reminder along just like we did today. Bonnie and I are also always here to help. So we have moved our office completely online in the last couple of weeks. So we are ready and available to do these types of meetings one-on-one as well. So if you want to go over your cover letter, resume, your job search strategy, how to track those applications you're getting ready to send out, if you want help connecting to an employer, critiquing your business plan, really just about anything that falls in the different worlds that we live in, Bonnie and I are happy to help. Between the two of us, we have extremely diverse networks and access to different types of people. So by reaching out, you'll likely get a handoff to someone that'll be really valuable to you. The other thing too is that Bonnie and I are not so egotistical that we wouldn't pass you to the most appropriate person. So if you reach out to me, but what you need help with would be better suited to Bonnie, I'm gonna pass you to Bonnie and vice versa. So we know our strengths, we complement each other really well, and we want to be able to share those with you and help you guys out however we can too. So if you want to schedule a meeting with one of us, we encourage you to do so. Other than that, Bonnie and I have decided that it's time for us to be on Facebook and Instagram, so we're having a pretty darn fun time with that. So if you go and check us out on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see some pretty cool stories of kids kicking us in the face while we're on Zoom calls, or some other fun Bitmojis. So check it out. We're gonna start featuring businesses and students there as soon as we start to build up our stories. So there'll be some fun, cool things to interact with there too. Other than that, if no one has anything else, that's all we've got. We look forward to seeing you online again next week. Shoot us an email, schedule a one-on-one, and thanks for being here. Pew, pew.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy that sunshine.
You too.